school safety. Gun control advocates slam the president's new plan to prevent school shootings. We'll tell you what's in it. Down to the wire, we're in Pennsylvania previewing tomorrow's special election featuring a pro-life candidate backed by the White House. Abolishing term limits. Chinese lawmakers open up the possibility of their president leading the country for life. And hackers with a heart. Techies descend on the Vatican to help tackle pressing problems. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, March 12th, 2018. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. The White House unveils plans to beef up school security, including arming some teachers and improving background checks. The president appoints Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos to head a committee on school safety. A national organization of Catholic educators is calling on the Trump administration to include private schools in the conversation. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. I spoke with the president of the National Catholic Educational Association today, who tells me any federal money going to school security should be accessible to Catholic schools. He also said addressing gun violence requires action on all levels. One of those actions is more prayer.
Prayer is action. Prayer is our conversation to the Lord, to our Father in heaven, asking God to intervene.
Tom Burnford leads NCEA. The group supports the ongoing faith formation of nearly 2 million Catholic school students. Burnford says federal proposals for school safety should keep those kids in mind.
That if there's legislation and resources made available, that they are accessible to private schools as well.
The White House has now released its plan for boosting school safety almost a month after the deadly school shooting in Parkland, Florida. The Trump administration wants to harden schools by providing guns and training to some school staff. They also want to improve the accuracy and effectiveness of background checks and expand and reform mental health programs. Burnford says federal dollars can be used to increase school security measures, but he's opposed to arming teachers.
To myself as an educator, it doesn't make sense to have guns in schools at all, period, end of story. But it's a very complex issue.
The president tweeting his thought today: if schools are mandated to be gun-free zones, violence and danger are given an open invitation to enter. Almost all school shootings are in gun-free zones. Cowards will only go where there is no deterrent. But the president is backing off a proposal he made last month to raise the age limit to buy assault weapons.
We're talking about rules and regulations for purchasing. We're talking about changing an age from 18 to 21.
Trump now says there isn't much political support. The age issue is still on the table, says Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos, appointed to head a federal commission on school safety.
What we want Betsy DeVos to really focus on, as with all the government, is to put children first.
Tom Burnford there, the president of the National Catholic Educational Association. He joined a group of private educators today who met with Secretary DeVos. I'm told they advocated for the passage of the Stop School Violence Act. That legislation would provide funds for training and technology to identify and prevent school threats. Lauren?
White House correspondent Mark Irons, thank you. The president was in Pennsylvania over the weekend campaigning for Republican Rick Saccone, a pro-life candidate in the state's special election.
You know what? Do me a favor, get out on Tuesday, vote for Rick Saccone, and we can leave right now. Come on.
The president also criticizes the pro-abortion viewpoints of his opponent, Democrat Conor Lamb, saying in terms of abortion, take a look at his record, because where his record is, that's where he's going. And it's the last day for candidates to campaign before that special election tomorrow. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi joins us from Elizabeth, Pennsylvania, where he's following the tight race. Good evening, Jason.
Republican candidate Rick Saccone just wrapped up a rally with Donald Trump Jr. here in the heart of Trump country. President Trump won this congressional district by 20 points, but a brand new poll puts the Democrat Conor Lamb ahead of Saccone by 6 points. This is a key test of how Republicans might do this fall as they try to maintain control of Congress. I spoke to one Trump voter who says once again this year he's going to vote for the Republican, Rick Saccone.
Donald Trump seems like, he'd like talking to my brother or something like that, like a normal person on the level, and says what he thinks. Instead of, sugarcoating everything, I believe he's doing the right things.
And so that turns you to vote for Rick because that's his guy?
Yes.
Pennsylvania's 18th congressional district, just south of Pittsburgh, has been redrawn. In 10 months from now, neither Saccone nor Lamb will live within the same boundaries. Today, Saccone is making his last campaign stops with Donald Trump Jr., including one at this candy store where he and the president's son met supporters, watched as the Sarah's Candy employees made Easter candy. Now, this seat is up for grabs because Tim Murphy resigned amidst a scandal involving a mistress. And a Lamb victory right here in the heart of Trump country, where Trump really prevailed in 2016, would be a bad omen for Republicans as they try to keep control of Congress this fall. Democrats only need to flip 24 seats, Lauren, to win the majority.
Where do these candidates in Pennsylvania stand on pro-life issues, Jason?
Well, Connor Lamb, the Democrat, is a Catholic, but he says he'd vote against the 20-week abortion ban. Rick Saccone, in his time in the State House here in Pennsylvania, actually sponsored a bill to ban abortions after the unborn baby's heartbeat could be detected.
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi in Elizabeth, Pennsylvania. Thank you. Christopher Bedford, the editor-in-chief at the Daily Caller, joins me now. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me back.
Anytime. Do you think the weekend's visit by President Trump will boost Saccone's chance?
Definitely. He's extremely popular here. There's some places in this country where Donald Trump is not very popular, and there's a lot of places throughout the country where liberals are really activated, and they're energized by opposition to Donald Trump. We've seen that in most of the special elections that have happened so far. But he is in Trump country here. He's 20 points ahead, or at least he beat Hillary by 20 points, and he could probably help out a lot. The problem is Lamb is not Hillary Clinton and Saccone is not Donald Trump, and that's who they're going to vote on.
Right, and the Republicans have held this district since 2002. How do you think the results of this race will shape the midterm election forecast?
Yeah, exactly. It's just going to be a part of the forecast because neither of these guys will be representing this district in 9 months. It's going to be over, so that doesn't really matter for whether or not Democrats take control of the House. But it will be a sign here that Democrats have a chance to really change the House over to their control, beat a lot of Republicans. But I don't think they're really going to follow it because Lamb has been pushing a pro-Second Amendment, kind of a more conservative Democratic point of view, the kind of point of view which is really out of style amongst the Democratic Party and amongst their base. And they won't be able to run moderate Democrats in most of these elections, and that's probably going to hurt them.
Let's talk about the pro-life point of view. We heard Jason talking about that. Lamb says that he is Catholic, but he doesn't call himself pro-life because that's a political term. How will that play with voters there?
Well, Catholic voters who are paying attention, that should play very poorly with them. Being for life is not politics. Saying that you're privately for life, but you're going to vote against life, that's actually politics. It's hypocrisy. And a lot of Catholics in the United States politics have gotten away with this for years by saying, hey, I'm not going to legislate this and trying to blame the Supreme Court. But recently, the U.S. Council of Bishops have really started to crack down. And we saw this with Senator Dick Durbin's vote against the late-term abortion ban and the Bishop of Springfield saying, you're not welcome to take communion until you repent and come back.
We had a primary election in Texas where we had talked to the pro-life group there. They said that Texas is very much a pro-life state. So with this issue, Texas won, the Republican won, the pro-life person won. Do you think that pro-life issues in general will play a major part in upcoming special elections and in the midterms?
Absolutely, and we've seen that before in Texas, and we've seen Democratic overreach on this issue in Texas. When they got really excited by Wendy Davis, that short firework of a political celebrity who was famous for standing up to abort children in the final trimester. This made her famous in Democratic and activist ranks and decided to run her for governor in Texas, she got annihilated. And when Republicans were running in Alabama against an accused child molester, the Democrats barely eked out a win because they put up a pro-abortion candidate. And that was against an incredibly flawed Republican candidate. So young people are more energized, all types of Americans are more energized. Polls show that pro-life is polling at a higher level than it has in decades in this country. And that's something that Republicans should run on. Save babies, protect guns, basic constitutional rights, and those are things that we win on. Republicans.
Thank you so much, Christopher Bedford, for your insight. Editor-in-Chief at the Daily Caller.
Thank you.
Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren sets the record straight on her political ambitions.
I am not running for president in 2020, but let me tell
Warren says her focus is winning her re-election to the Senate this year and representing the people of Massachusetts. The Democrat has been one of the staunchest critics of President Trump, who frequently refers to her as Pocahontas. That's a reference to Warren's claims of Native American ancestry. A Massachusetts newspaper has challenged Warren to take a DNA test, but she has not accepted. At least 50 people are dead following a plane crash in Nepal. Police say the twin-propeller airplane erupted in flames as it landed at Kathmandu's airport. At least 16 survivors are being treated at a local hospital. The flight was coming from Bangladesh. The Russian military says it ran a successful test for a nuclear-capable missile. Officials say it can evade enemy defenses, including American ones. It is also 10 times faster than the speed of sound. British Prime Minister Theresa May says it's highly likely a British spy was poisoned by Russia. Scientists say the nerve agent poison was developed by the Soviet Union near the end of the Cold War. Both the spy and his daughter remain in critical condition. A big change to China's constitution as the communist government votes to abolish presidential term limits. Religious freedom advocates worry it could make life tougher for Christians. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reports from the State Department. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. It's not just religious advocates who are worried. Experts and economists say China is becoming more authoritarian. President Xi Jinping is already one of the most powerful Chinese leaders in decades. Now he could rule indefinitely. China's parliament voted overwhelmingly this Sunday to remove any limit on presidential terms. That allows the 64-year-old current president, Xi Jinping, to serve beyond 2023. Chinese analysts are concerned it could lead to one-man rule.
It gives the leader, whoever it is, be Xi Jinping or back in the time of Mao Zedong, enormous power and leads to potentially very risky decision-making because there will be no checks and balances.
President Trump blasted the media over the weekend after his response.
But I was joking, and I said, president for life, that sounds good. Maybe we're going to have to try it. President for life. But I'm joking.
But the move is not a joke for Catholics and other Christians. They're worried they'll lose their already limited freedom of worship. In China, all churches must be registered with the government. Public baptisms, weddings, and funerals are often shunned. Benedict Rogers, a human rights expert with the group Christian Solidarity Worldwide, says life for Christians has gotten worse since Xi came to power 5 years ago. He says, quote, "We have seen the arrest and disappearance of human rights lawyers, many of whom are Christian or have been involved in defending religious freedom, and increasing restrictions on religious freedom, including the destruction of thousands of crosses in Xinjiang province." According to Open Doors USA, only 97 million Christians live in China out of a population of 1.3 billion people, and many of them are afraid to openly admit they are Christian. The Holy See has not commented. Both the Vatican and China have strong disagreements over the appointment of bishops in the country. The Chinese government has proposed offering a list of clergy members they approve of to the Vatican. Both sides are still negotiating. Lauren?
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the State Department. Thank you, Wyatt. Cuba takes the final step before a promised transition to a younger generation of leadership. President Raul Castro is among the millions who voted yesterday to ratify a list of members of the communist country's National Assembly. Miguel Diaz-Canel is expected to become president in April. He says the next government will be more responsive to the people. The 57-year-old also wants to improve relations with Washington. A new law in Poland shuts down most retail stores and supermarkets on Sundays. The legislation gives workers in the majority Catholic country a day of rest. Church leaders say they welcome the move. The law closes most stores 2 Sundays per month right now. Shops will be closed almost all Sundays by 2020. Pope Francis honors volunteers at a Catholic organization that helps Syrian refugees. They provide humanitarian aid for migrants to reach a safe place in Europe. The St. Egidio community is celebrating 50 years. Pope Francis calls on the faithful to open their hearts to the gift of God's salvation. At his weekly Angelus address yesterday, the Holy Father says being a Christian is not easy and there are no shortcuts. But when we get into trouble, God will always give us his hand if we ask. The surviving daughter of civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. meets with the Pope at the Vatican. Bernice King gave the Holy Father a book of her father's published papers. She later called the meeting, quote, life-changing. King was 5 years old when her father was assassinated. Coming up, honoring a cardinal, remembering Germany's Cardinal Karl Lehmann. And a billionaire offers a hefty prize for March Madness success. We reported earlier that the president has released his gun violence plan after meetings with students, politicians, and families. He's created a new federal commission on school safety to address increasing the minimum age for purchasing assault weapons, as well as a long list of other topics. Joining us now to discuss this is John Malcolm from the Heritage Foundation. John, welcome back.
Great to be with you, Lauren.
In a recently released document, the White House says that the administration is going to help states with money to provide firearms training to specially qualified personnel in schools. Is empowering states with more money to do activities like this the right approach?
Well, I might prefer that the funding would come directly from the states themselves, but if the federal government is going to get involved, I can certainly think of no better way for them to spend their money. It's worth noting that there are a lot of states that already allow specially trained teachers to conceal carry. Those schools have not had any incidents of violence, or people were afraid that guns would be lost or mishandled and students would be hurt. None of those fears have come to pass. And yes, using some federal funds to help in a variety of measures, including training teachers who are willing to carry firearms to deal with violent situations should they ensue, infrastructure improvements to improve school safety is money well spent.
But isn't this controversial? I mean, this is controversial. There are many people, including students who say, and teachers who say, hey, I don't want this.
Sure, it is controversial, and maybe some schools and states will decide that they don't want that, and that is their prerogative. I mean, these should be decisions that are made at the state and local level. Nonetheless, gun-free zones often attract people who are intent on wreaking mayhem, and as I say, a number of states allow teachers to conceal carry, and they haven't had any problems in those states.
So Florida passed a law last week. Governor Scott signed it with restrictions on guns.
Right.
The NRA has already sued to stop that law. Are we likely to see more states pass laws? And is the NRA in control in wrapping it up by suing?
Well, the president has said that he thinks that these decisions should be made at the state level. Florida has taken this step. Other states may as well. The NRA objects to this. They note the fact that people who are younger than 21 often have families of their own, or they want to engage in self-defense or hunting or target practice. They're going to assert a Second Amendment violation. I don't know what's going to happen with those lawsuits. It is federal law that you can't buy a handgun before you're 21, but in part that passed constitutional muster because one could purchase another firearm for self-defense.
But the president had earlier said last month when he was meeting with lawmakers and the NRA, look, he is open to age limits. And now all of a sudden it's on this list of this blue ribbon commission that's going to be studied. Well, why did he back down?
That doesn't mean that he's not open to it. All he's saying is that there are certain steps that he can take immediately with respect to releasing federal funds and providing training by the Department of Justice. And what he can do immediately, he will do immediately. With respect to things that would require legislative fixes and other potential measures, not only to deal with school safety but gun control, he's going to have this commission study. It makes sense.
The U.S. bishops also weigh in on doing anything that can possibly be done and have urged Congress to adopt reasonable policies to help curb gun violence. And we'll see what they have to say about this most recent release from the White House. John Malcolm from the Heritage Foundation, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you.
A nun involved in a lawsuit with pop star Katy Perry over the sale of a Los Angeles convent dies after collapsing in court. Sister Catherine Rose Holzman died on Friday. She was 89. The sister is part of the religious community in court over the sale of a convent it used for more than 40 years. Singer Katy Perry sought to buy the property while the nuns tried to sell it to a local entrepreneur. In a statement, Los Angeles Archbishop Jose Gomez said, "We extend our prayers today to the Immaculate Heart of Mary community and to all her friends and loved ones." Cardinal Karl Lehmann, the former head of Germany's Catholic Bishops' Conference, has died. Lehmann was appointed as Bishop of Mainz in 1983 and led the country's more than 23 million Catholics for 20 years as president of the German Bishops' Conference. German Chancellor Angela Merkel called him one of the most prominent faces of the Catholic Church in Germany. He was 81 years old. Up next, the Vatican gets help finding solutions for big world problems. We'll have a report from Rome. And a generous reward for a perfect basketball bracket. Hacking at the Vatican. It doesn't sound like a good thing, but organizers are calling the first ever Vatican Hackathon a success.
We're not attacking, we're defending. We're here all defenders, and we're defending the causes that we all believe in.
More than 100 students from universities around the world, including Harvard and MIT, tackled pressing problems dear to Pope Francis. The computer programming marathon focused on how to find solutions for migrants and the poor. We go now to Rome, where Jakub Flortkowicz, co-creator of the Vatican Hackathon, joins us. He's also an MBA student from Harvard. Welcome to the program.
Hello, how are you?
Very good, thank you. What is a hackathon, and why bring one to the Vatican?
Hackathon is a combination of two words, marathon and hacking. But in that sense, it has nothing to do with attacking computer systems or firewalls. It is actually about solving problems, and I would even put it, it's about more being defenders of a cause. So we don't want to be attackers, we want to be defenders of the causes that unite us. And for that hackathon, we have selected 3: interfaith communication, social inclusion, and problems related to migrants and refugees.
Tell us what those are, and why do this at the Vatican? What does the Pope have to do with this? Anything?
Oh, absolutely. So the Vatican has a long history of science, technology, and faith working together, collaborating across boundaries on causes that unite us. And this event is all about this. It is about working together on the causes that we all care about. And the Vatican has the global reach, and at its core, it's an organization that helps humans, that's human-centric and advances the human cause. So in that sense, it's the event that's aligned clearly with what the Vatican does day to day, helping people all over the world.
So what I love about this is that it's kids, teens, right? And college students who are coming together. I know my kids are always giving me these things called life hacks. Is that similar? Is that sort of what we're talking about?
So we have, as you're saying, we have teams coming from all over the world. We had teams coming from Australia, Malaysia, from Argentina, from Africa and United States. So we had 24 teams that work together to solve issues. I'm not sure if it's about life hacks, but it's about solving problems. And so these teams worked on, I would say, and ideas that we hope will turn into life on young ventures, on startup ideas or social initiatives that can turn into reality. And we hope that with our support going forward, some of them actually will help people around the world.
Right. So I think that's wonderful. Those life hacks that my kids talk about only refer to, a trick or a shortcut or a skill that can solve just a basic problem. This is sort of a life hack writ large. Thank you so much for your time, Jakub Florkovic, co-chairman of VHacks.
Thank you so much. All the best.
And the Yankees were good, and they were tough. They were about as tough as anybody. But you guys were just a little bit tougher. So congratulations.
President Trump hosts the World Series champions, Houston Astros. He praised the team's involvement in the city's recovery from Hurricane Harvey. The Astros won the title after beating the New York Yankees and the LA Dodgers. The NCAA men's basketball tournament, also known as March Madness, begins this week. And of the 68 teams, 9 are Catholic schools, including 2 top seeds. Villanova and Xavier received the #1 seeds. Other Catholic schools, Gonzaga, Creighton, Seton Hall, St. Bonaventure, Loyola Chicago, Providence, and Iona. Villanova is the most recent Catholic school to win the championship. It did so in 2016. And billionaire Warren Buffett is offering an amazing prize to his employees. If any of them picks a perfect bracket, 1 million smackers a year for life. And the staffer who keeps their bracket going the longest gets $100,000. Imagine what you could do with that money. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Let's keep in touch online. Follow me at Lauren Ashburn on Twitter and Lauren Ashburn EWTN on Facebook. Good night, and God bless you.